By the way, you mentioned vampire hunters at the beginning of the conversation, and
Mhm.
you said that dogs could also be
In
vampire
some
hunters.
cases,
Did I hear
yeah.
that correctly?
Yes, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that
Yeah.
earlier. Is there like was there an actual profession of a vampire hunter in
Mhm.
medieval Europe?
Yeah, and well, yeah,
Because I know there are witch hunters.
yeah.
I had a conversation with a historian that's researching witchcraft and witch trials in medieval Europe, and she said that witch hunters actually existed. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
just people who were conning people.
Yeah,
But
basically, yeah.
what was the deal with vampire hunters?
Vampire hunters are part of folklore. So, one important detail there is you find them way less in Slavic folklore than you do vampires. And the reason for that is, the stuff you see about vampire hunters in media today, like Dr. Von Helsing using like communion wafer paste and crucifixes, those are all modern inventions. The original vampire hunter wouldn't need like a gun that shot steaks, or they wouldn't even really need to carry garlic or anything like that. And the reason for that is any average peasant could do all that stuff already. You don't need a vampire hunter to do that. The vampire hunter was kind of like a last resort, because in many cases they were supposed. Actually, you could probably say in most cases the vampire hunter was supposed to be half human, half vampire. Whereas a witch hunter, in pretty much all
Like a
cases,
blade?
yeah, where you essentially, the idea was that a vampire, when it came back from the grave, which in original Slavic belief was only men, and then eventually it could be women and stuff. And if a male vampire came back from the grave and sexually assaulted you, and you were a woman and got pregnant from it, then the child that's born from that so-called unholy union could be a vampire hunter. They had different names for them, like Dampir, Vampirovich was another one. But a special one is what's called the Sabotnik. How do you say Saturday in Slovenian?
Sobota.
Sobota. In Polish it's Sobota. In Russian it's Subota. Yeah, same root. Sabot,
Yeah.
Saturday, seventh day of the week. So if you were born on Saturday, in certain areas it was believed you could have vampire hunting powers. You weren't half vampire. You were human, but you had these special vampire hunting powers because that was a sacred day. So it's called the Sabotnik. So if you had a dog born on Saturday, check your doggy birth dates, that dog could be essentially more skilled at finding a vampire in a cemetery. So you'd go around.
That's just it. Born on a Saturday.
Yeah, that's
That's
yeah,
the one condition you have to.
Okay. One of the primary ones. There were other things. Does the dog have this certain hair color, or is its one eye different, or something like that? But if the dog was born on a Saturday, or if you were born on a Saturday, look at your birth date. You could be a legit
Tuesday. I'm a Tuesday baby.
No,
Too bad.
bummer.
Too bad.
Maybe with the leap year in there or something, you could finagle it. But anyway.
By the way, vampires were sexually assaulting people as well. You just said.
Yeah.
It wasn't just they woke up in the middle of the night and bit somebody and drank some blood.
No.
They were sexually assaulting people, and then they believed that a half vampire baby was born. I mean, how did that go? That sounds completely nuts.
Where did it come from?
Yeah, and how did they say which baby was a half vampire?
Well,
did a woman claim that she was assaulted?
Yeah, so there's some debate about that, but the basic theory is that if you had a child born outside of wedlock, I mean, today no one really cares. Well, depending on where you are in the world. In like United States, if you have a child born outside of wedlock, if you're not in like a really strict Christian or whatever background, most people probably don't care that much unless you're viewed as being too young to be able to really raise it. But if you were like in your 20s and had a baby before being married, probably most people wouldn't care. But back then, that was like big taboo. So if you had a husband and your husband died and you weren't pregnant, and then suddenly like a couple months after he's dead, like you're pregnant, people would be like, wait a minute, why do your husband died though? So how are you like 5 months if he died? Or how are you 3 months along if he died 4 months ago? So it's kind of harsh, but essentially what the argument is that in certain cases, to make their child more socially acceptable, they'd say, well, I didn't want to say anything, but vampire kind of attacked me, and here's the baby now. But it hunts vampires, see, so hey, we're good. So it basically gives the child some sort of social relevance now. And in certain cases, there are probably children that were raised to actually believe they were that, where it was like actually a boyfriend or an affair partner or someone else, and that was the actual father, because of course vampires don't actually exist. So that's the theory, is where that came from. But Sabotnik is a special type where you just be born on that day and you got vampire powers now, basically. But
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Your mother just telling you when you're like 16 you're special because you're a
dad
half vampire and you're a vampire Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I want to add one
Holy
detail.
shit! That must be an identity crisis if there ever was one. But what did the vampire hunter do then? How did he hunt vampires?
So they would traditionally, based on what we know, especially from Balkans region, what we know from the folklore there is the vampire would traditionally hunt with a gun or a knife or both. And the reason for this is that in original belief, only men could be vampires, and one of the ways you could become a vampire is if you commit suicide. And even in mental health statistics, I used to work in mental health for a little while. Even in mental health statistics today, when men commit suicide, they tend statistically to choose more violent methods than women do. So they'll take a gun or they'll take a knife. So knife and gun were essentially like sort of folkish symbols of male suicide. So if you had this vampire that this is why you call upon the vampire hunter. You've already done the crosses or maybe the garlic, maybe you burn the body and there's still vampire tags. So obviously this one's a little more powerful. We need someone that can like see into like the supernatural plane of existence to kill this thing now. And now you go get them. And they would, so they basically would be using the gun or the knife symbolically, like to sort of like, it's almost like, using spiritual power, like the Witcher or something, to kill the vampire supernaturally and to basically erase its existence. So that's essentially how they would work. And they would have these sort of like bizarre ritual processes they would do. One of the things we know, for example, is they would take hawthorn berries or leaves or bark, and they would chew on that because hawthorn is another example of Slavic lore. It's known for curative functions. So they would like chew on hawthorn to get more powers in, and they were supposed to be able to then
hawthorn.
Yeah, it's like a small bush or tree that's known for being resistant to plant diseases and stuff like that.
All right, thank you to my lovely patrons, Taichi, Carmen, and Veronica. Thank you for your support. You're amazing. If you want to support Eurotrash too, you can do that. Just go to Patreon and find me there. Right, thanks again.